You have a number of albums that have come out since the Goldberg Variations. Have those also been privately funded, or were they funded in other ways through crowdsourcing or crowdfunding or grants, or was it private?
No. Once I was taken on by Telarc, then they did a couple of albums themselves, and then I was taken on by Sony, and they've done their albums. So it's been the labels that have paid for them since then.
That's very unusual now, though.
It's very unusual.
Labels. That's why I didn't even think that was an option.
Yeah, no, it is really unusual. I mean, my last album with Sony, I actually decided to do as a licensing, so that in that one I funded that with some other people.
Can you explain what a licensing is to those who don't know?
Right. So licensing means that the artist owns the master, and they license it to a record label for a specific period of time. During that time, they can distribute it and market it and whatever, but at a certain point it comes back to them. And that is what I did with the Goldberg Variations. I licensed that to Telarc, so in 2 years it's mine again, and I can decide whether or not to keep it with Telarc or to give it to another label or whatever I want to do with it. I own it. So with the last album, it was an unusual grouping of pieces. It's the Ravel Piano Concerto, a piano concerto that was written for me by Philip Lasser, who's a composer who I adore, and then Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. So we own that. I own that, theoretically with Philip. It's made me think that it's really great as an artist to own your own music. I mean, if it's at all possible to do it, I think that's the way to go. I think that's the way of the future. Because if a record label owns your music, then you have no control over it. I mean, it can go out of print, or they can decide to do whatever they want to do with it, and you have absolutely no rights to it. I mean, the only real advantage to a record label owning your music is if they pay for it. And I guess at a certain point in your career, you can, if you feel like you're in a position to do so, it can make sense to make that investment yourself in your own music.
But then how do you distribute that?
Well,
if
you own it. So I think licensing is a great way to do it, and there are also different ways of doing it. Like there are joint ventures where you own the master, but then the artist and the record label work together equally to cover costs of distribution, and then of course a lot of people now are starting their own record labels. And then you just find a distributor who can help you figure out how to disseminate the music. But frankly speaking, I think in 5 years, if not earlier, there won't be any more CDs. When there's no more physical product and everything is either a download or probably not even downloads anymore, probably everything will be streamed. Then it's very hard to know the role of a record label, because anybody can go onto the internet and figure out a way to get their music to people. I think the unfortunate part of all of this is that people are now expecting to get music for free.
Right.
And while I enjoy Spotify as much as anybody else, I think that there's something really shockingly disrespectful about musicians to think that you can own their music for free. I mean, that you can listen to them for free, because somebody has to pay to make that music, and it's just part of wanting to get a shirt for $2 that a child made in another country. It's the same kind of thing. It's we want everything for nothing.